In this video, we're going to look at two different two-step equations that look relatively similar but are solved differently. So in these two examples, we should notice that they both have the same variable and have the same numbers that make up the equation. And then we're going to go ahead and start like we usually do by drawing a vertical line through our equal sign to split the equations into two expressions. And then let's start with the one on the left. So we want to find our variable, which is x, and we want to read that side of the equation starting with our variable. So if we do that, we would read it as x plus 3 divided by negative 8. And then I'm going to come back and solve this in a second, but I want to show you how this is different from the one on the right. Again, if we find our x value, and if we read this equation on the right, it is read x divided by negative 8 plus 3. So just from reading it, we can see that we read them differently, which means that we're going to have to solve them differently. So let's go ahead and solve the one on the left completely, and then we'll go back to example 4. So the last thing that we read in example 3 was divided by negative 8. So the opposite of division is multiplication, and we're going to multiply by negative 8. Keeping in mind, we change the operation, but we do not change the sign that's with the number. I'm going to go ahead and recopy the equation so we have some room to show our work. So now I'm actually going to multiply by negative 8 on both sides. And then on the left, I know that times negative 8 and divide by negative 8 will cancel each other out. And I'm left with x plus 3. And then on the right-hand side, 5 times negative 8 gives me negative 40. And then up above, I can cross that step out because I know I'm completed with it. Then in the next step, it is plus 3. So the inverse would be minus 3 because addition and subtraction are inverses. And then I'm going to do that on both sides of my equation. Positive 3 minus 3 equals 0. And they're inverses, so they cancel out. And then negative 40 minus 3 is negative 43, keeping in mind that they both have the same sign. So it's like you lost $40 and then you lost another $3. So you're in debt negative $43. So then that's your answer. Now for example 4, we're going to do the same thing, except the last step that we read was plus 3. So that's the first thing that we've got to do is take the inverse of addition, which is subtracting 3 from both sides. Positive 3 minus 3 equals 0. So then my x divided by negative 8 drops down. And then 5 minus 3 equals 2. And then I can cross out that step that it's completed. And then my next step is divided by negative 8. So the inverse is multiply by negative 8. And then again, if I do that on both sides, negative times negative 8 and divide by negative 8 are inverses. So I can cancel them out. Keeping in mind it's going to equal 1, which we've talked about before. And then my x drops down. And then 2 times negative 8 gives me negative 16. So even though these problems look similar, the way you solve them is completely different and you get completely different answers. You could check each of these answers by substituting them into the original equation to make sure that they do equal 5. Just remember, if you can read the equation, you're going to work backwards using inverse operations to solve the equation.